Okay. Hi guys, so today we're going to be doing our second webinar on personal experiences. So almost every member of our team is present here. So we're just kind of going to give you a breakthrough of how we got into wherever we got in and what helped us in the process. So we're going to begin with introductions just so you get to know more of us today. I'm Shuvi. I'm going to Stanford to study human biology and communications on a pre-med track.
My name's Ashley. I'm going to UCLA to study psychobio on a pre-med track.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm going to USC to study art, technology, and the business of innovation.
Hey, I'm Audrey. I'm going to MIT to study computer science and cognitive science.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm going to UC San Diego to study molecular biology.
Hi everyone, I'm Iris, and I'm also going to Stanford to study Earth systems and computer science.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey. I'm going to UC San Diego for computer science.
I am Nitin. I'm going to UCLA for computational biology.
And hi, I'm Swara. I'm going to UCSB to study biology.
So again, we're going to introduce our program to you now. We're at It's for Good. We're like the whole team here, and we basically help college application goers, so like rising seniors in high school, with their college application. So we help you in every stage, and you give us like a little fee, like as written in the presentation here, but all of this goes directly to the NAACP. We keep nothing because we believe in kind of distributing it to a cause that's really important to us. So yeah, just like join our services and help Black Lives Matter along the way. And so, like I said, we're going to talk about our personal experiences. So the agenda for today is talking about what we did in high school, the approach to college essays with examples, and what we wish we had done differently, as well as personal victories and reflection. So we're going to start off with what we did at high schoolers at Monte Vista. Monte Vista is a very STEM-focused high school in the Bay Area. We all went there. That's how we know each other. So some of these things that we talk about might be more particular to Monte Vista, but in general, it just should serve as a good example, more of a template of what you can do in high school and what you can write about based off that. So before we begin, there are two terms that you hear a lot in the college application process that cause a bit of an anxiety in some people. So you have the spiked applicant. This is a person who's really good at one field in particular. So they have like intense engagement and lots of recognition in that specific field as opposed to multiple fields of study. I've written some examples here. For example, if you are Talia and you're really interested in econ, a lot of your major extracurriculars are going to be on econ. So that's like your strength. That's what you're going to bring to the community. Then you have the well-rounded applicant who is really good at a lot of things, but not like amazing in the way that the spiked applicant is in that specific field. So you can be a member of many different clubs, pursue many diverse interests that you have, and then still like do well. I think going into this, a lot of people are afraid that you hear these days, like if you go on like college application websites, like Prep Scholar or whatever, that you should be a spiked applicant. That's not true at all. As you'll see later on, like all of us had our own different like spikedness or well-roundedness, and we all did okay. Colleges want like a well-rounded class. That doesn't necessarily mean only accepting spiked people. It also means accepting a good amount of well-rounded people. Like, trust me, we're all just in high school. Most likely we're not going to be like amazing at just one certain thing because we're all still exploring our different fields. So do not get a lot of anxiety over this. Just work with what you have, and what's most important is having a cohesive story weaving in all your experiences. That being said, I was more of a spiked applicant. My passion was writing and using writing to do like social justice causes. So here I've taken like screenshots straight from my Common App. So this is what all colleges saw. And you can kind of see what I did here. A lot of it was concentrated on writing, journalism. This one here was more research-based because that's something that I'm passionate about as well. And I want to bring your attention to two activities in particular. This one is so I created this nonprofit thing for journalism. And here I just included like a description with no like hard facts, no numbers in this activity section, but that's not necessarily a good idea. Like you should always use numbers. And the reason that I didn't include numbers here is because I wanted to take this space to kind of just talk about what this organization is, because it's hard to do that in such like 150 characters. So instead, if you feel that you can't really like encapsulate all aspects of your activity in like just the activity section, you can use the additional information section as well to include more hard numbers. So that's what I did. Like I told how many courses I've created and whatever. I also included more of a hobby thing, which is right here, the journalism project in India that I did in 9th grade summer. So this is included more towards the end of my application, but I felt like this was really important to me. It wasn't really attached to any formal organization or club. And I think that causes a bit of anxiety as well if you do things that are just, for your own personal development. But I had people tell me that they were really curious about this. So don't feel like just because it's something that's not like formal, you can't include it on your application, because you definitely can if it serves a meaningful purpose.
Yeah, so for me, I was definitely more of a well-rounded applicant, as like Shuvi mentioned earlier. For me, like since I had a lot of different activities in school, I tried to use all of those as ways to show character growth rather than like a specific academic / sport or whatever interest. So for me, one of my most intense extracurriculars that I had throughout high school was being in the color guard team. And so I talked a lot about that here in the application. It was this is clearly a very short description, but I did elaborate a lot on it later on. And then for my other club activity, you can see like I sort of built on top of the color guard thing, and I added like the other experience that I had in a different organization that I had built upon from my school experience. And then finally, another one of my big extracurriculars was being on the journalism staff in our high school. So I'd mentioned that too. But all of these things, even though they don't seem super interconnected, like right off the bat, I used common ways that they helped shape me as a person to make them cohesive later on in my application.
Yeah, so just like Emily, I was more of a well-rounded applicant. I had a lot of different interests, so I did a lot of different things. I did some community service, art, paid artwork. I was also part of like sports and volleyball. And as for my first activity, I put my club that I was part of, and I made sure to put it first because it was what was most important to me. So I really wanted to establish that. And however, to make it more cohesive, I used the personality trait that was really important to me, which is empathy, to connect all of my interdisciplinary interests. For example, with like my graphic design work, I talked about like, human-centered design and really using empathy to create better designs because you're thinking about the user end. Then I talked about how I grew in empathy through my work in my club and working with those members. And also when I was working with kids, using empathy to connect with them. So by being able to connect this trait that's really close and important to me, which I value, through all of my interests, I showed a cohesive application.
I would also describe myself as a well-rounded applicant in terms of my application, but I had two main areas of interest that showed different sides of my character. And these two areas I would describe as creativity and then STEM or science. I think that the more creative extracurriculars show a more human side to my application, whereas the research extracurriculars show my logical side and my love for STEM-related subjects. Like Alicia, I listed these activities in order of time commitment and importance. And for me, my most important activity was being the editor-in-chief of our school's yearbook. And I was also really invested in my role as a percussionist in COIS and an art volunteer leader at an organization called Amaze. And these are more of my creative activities. And for my STEM activities, I created a research paper with a professor, and I was the co-president of Neuroscience Club. And as for my essays, even though I was a STEM major planning to go on a pre-med track, I wasn't afraid to talk about my extracurriculars that were more of a humanities topic, and I would even meld the two sides. For example, in an essay, I talked about how my experience as a volunteer for kids on the autistic spectrum led to my interest in neuroscience, so I joined that club.
So for me, I had like three distinct activities that I wanted my application to feature, and figuring out a way to combine all three cohesively was what I was working on for like the majority of my Common App, because it was like really hard for me. So what I ended up doing was, so I had running, Rubik's Cube, and then research. And the research was more like computational focused. So for running and Rubik's Cube, I had an event where I was running while solving a Rubik's Cube, so I figured that would be a decent way to combine that. And then combining research into that was probably the hardest, but what I ended up writing one of my essays about was how when I'm doing research, I'm seeing something and working with data, in my case, that no one has ever done before, and doing things that no one has done before. And in the same way, when I'm solving a Rubik's Cube, you're looking at one of 43 quintillion different combinations. And statistically, no one has seen that case before. So that was kind of the connection I made. And that was like how I connected all three, because for me, I really wanted everything to be intertwined, because I think that's really important when you're telling your story. And another thing to note is, I only have it up here, but I had Rubik's Cube in the leadership as a separate activity, and then Rubik's Cube as a competitive aspect as a separate activity. Other than that, because when you have things that are really rich and you've spent a lot of time with it, you can break them up into subcategories if you'd like.
For me, my extracurriculars throughout high school basically were focused into two different areas: writing and journalism, and the other being biology. And so I just organized my activity section to, first of all, in order of how many hours I spent on it. So the things I was most committed to throughout high school, I put at the top, and that's how it's ordered. And I just wanted to use the activities section to show how I had these two diverse passions, and I pursued a variety of activities to basically like gain more experience in both of those passions. So for example, I put chemistry club down for experience in bio, along with a program that I did over the summer. And then for writing and journalism, I put the writing club I was in at Monte Vista, and an internship I did, and Elistoke, which was my main time commitment throughout high school.
So for me, similar to a lot of the other members of our team, I was more of a well-rounded applicant, where most of my interests lie in three different categories, mostly my science research, leadership and community service, and also music. And so I let my activity section and also my essays be mostly focused on those three areas. And so with my activity section, similar to what Swara said, I organized it based on these interests and also kind of in the order of like what was most important to me. And then I actually did my activity section before I did most of my essays. So my essays, I kind of use it as a chance to put a lot of my activities into context, because I had like a lot of pretty different activities. And then in my essays, I kind of talked about how they all led to each other and also led to my interests.